Pokeballs are arguably tied with Pikachu for the most recognizable icon associated with the Pokemon franchise, and for good reason. Throughout the mainline series, there have been almost 40 different types of Pokeballs for the player to use in catching their companions, but with all these balls available, only 2 species can be caught in every single one, the legendary Pokemon Dialga and Palkia. Knowing this, and given that Palkia was the first Pokemon I ever reached level 100 with, I set out to obtain a collection of Palkia containing every single Pokeball in the series. Also, if you like what I do here, you might want to subscribe to this channel, and maybe follow me over on Twitch where I often stream the games that I turn into videos. Having played my fair share of Pokemon beforehand, I've already caught a handful of Palkia to start us off. When I built my living decks back in 2018-2019, I used a Dusk Ball to catch Palkia at Spear Pillar in Pokemon Platinum. Also in 2019, I caught some Palkia during raids in Pokemon Go, which uses Premier Balls. When I did my first playthrough of Legends Arceus in 2022, I used a Leaden Ball to catch Palkia at the Temple of Sinnoh. And similarly, I used a Master Ball to catch Palkia in my first playthrough of Shining Pearl. Finally, those of you who have watched my legendary Pokemon-only hardcore Nuzlocke know that I caught Palkia by using the Pokemon Dream Radar, which transfers its Pokemon over in Dream Balls. With those 5 out of the way already, we'll start our journey in Pokemon Pearl. Having completed pretty much every game where Palkia spawns already, we can go through the series and pick up the ones I've skipped. Normally, you catch Palkia at the climax of the story after defeating Cyrus. But in Diamond and Pearl, if the player defeated Dialga or Palkia, they will respawn at Spear Pillar after defeating the Elite Four. I decided to catch this one in a Heal Ball to both match the color and to use a Pokeball that was introduced in Generation 4. Speaking of this generation, Pearl and Platinum aren't the only games where Palkia is available. If the player brings an Event Arceus to the Ruins of Alpha Research Center in Heart Gold or Soul Silver, a cutscene will trigger that takes us to the Sinjoh Ruins. Here, Cynthia will show us the mystery stage and ask us to pick one of the 3 legendary dragons. After picking Palkia, we see Arceus and the Unknown come together in one of the strangest cutscenes in Pokemon, where the power of a stock image slideshow condenses down into a Palkia egg, which then immediately hatches into a level 1 Palkia and a Pokeball holding a Lustrous Orb. Despite going to the Toys R Us Arceus event back in 2009, I don't have them with me in Generation 4 anymore. We can circumvent this, however, with the DNS trick, which will allow us to connect to the Pokemon Classic network and receive Wi-Fi events as if they were still active. This requires a minimally secured Wi-Fi network to connect to, and in my experience only works on older devices that have fewer security measures. I personally use a TrendNet TEW731 router, but I've heard old phone hotspots also work. To do the DNS trick, we go to our Nintendo Wi-Fi connection settings from the main menu of Generation 4, and find the unsecured network. We then set the auto-obtained DNS setting to no, and put the primary DNS as 178.62.43.212, and the secondary DNS as 0000. With these settings, when you use Nintendo Wi-Fi connection features, you'll be connected to Pokemon Classic, which has support for the Wi-Fi Tower, Mystery Gift, and the GTX. The Toys R Us Arceus is available on Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum's Mystery Gift, so after receiving one, we can trade it to Soul Silver to activate the event, obtaining another Palkia for our collection. Now, Arceus isn't the only one cooking up some world-shaping shenanigans. There's one Pokeball that the last time I brought up this Dialga Palkia factoid, a handful of people said that I was wrong because Palkia can't be caught in the Park Ball, a sort of placeholder Pokeball used during a minigame when you transfer Pokemon from Generation 3 to 4 using the GBA cartridge slot. The Park Ball is entirely temporary, and any Pokemon you catch here will simply have whatever Pokeball they were caught in Generation 3. Even if you somehow got your hands on the item version of this ball in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the game will still default to a Pokeball when used on wild Pokemon. Despite that, arguing this ball counts is like saying that no one has ever completed a Living Form Pokedex because they're missing the Starmobile Rev-a-Rooms or something, you should know that I don't take the word every lightly on this channel. So let's go over what it would take to catch Palkia in a Park Ball. My first instinct was to create a glitch Pokemon in Generation 3 that has the same index number as Palkia, which would then become one when it was transferred to Generation 4. Using arbitrary code execution in Generation 3, we can easily create such a glitch Pokemon. Unfortunately for us, Generation 4 does have some validation to prevent glitch Pokemon from crossing over. My second plan was to use arbitrary script and arbitrary code execution in Diamond and Pearl to change an existing Palkia's Pokeball into a Park Ball. You may recall us using a similar exploit in my 104 Ribbon Steelix video, where biking in the void allowed us to perform scripts using our Poketch. In the short 5 months since that video, the potential of this glitch has exploded thanks to the effort of researchers like RetireGlitch, who helped steer me through what you're about to see. Before, we had to use RNG manipulation to catch a very specific Drifloon to make this glitch possible, but in the intervening time a new method has been discovered that uses any Kakuna instead, making the glitch much more accessible. To perform the new version of the glitch, we need to enter the Hall of Fame and register the 28th and 29th entries with only Kakuna on specific dates, and then have Kakuna leading our party on the 30th entry. A level 6 Kakuna has no hope of defeating the Elite Four without some serious grinding, so I instead used a well-known Diamond and Pearl glitch called tweaking to enter the Hall of Fame by escaping the map inside the Pokedex Company building. As with the previous version of the exploit, we then need to use a Machamp, Noctowl with a Silk Scarf, and a Cacturn, bike through the void, set up a wrong warp to push us out of bounds in the Jubilife Pokemon Center, and bike a casual 5,000 steps or so to obtain the Pal Park Retire function on our menu. Reaching a specific point in the void, we swap around our 3 Pokemon and open the menu right after closing it and hopping on an invisible ledge. By having a specific pattern of dots in our Poketch's Dot Artist app, combined with a specific selection of highlighted dates in the Poketch Calendar app, using the retire option here causes us to instantly warp out of the void and into the Pokemon League building. And while it might not appear like it at first, we now have access to some very powerful glitch tools. This method sets up a similar version of the glitch we used with Steelix, but has a few differences that make it more suitable to experimentation. This version is called NPC ASE and will persist as long as we stay inside the League building, and will execute the Poketch's Dot Artist app as a script anytime we talk to any of the NPCs here in the building. More importantly, this version of the glitch still works after saving and quitting the game, which means if the game crashes from here, we won't have to do all of the setup again. With the glitch set up, we can give it a test run by executing the script that gives the player an egg. By using this script to Dot Artist Converter site, we can make a script that will hand us a Palkia egg when we interact with the NPCs. The NPCs won't actually have any dialogue, as anything they had to say has been entirely replaced with whatever we draw in our Dot Artist. With a second, quite less legal Palkia egg in tow, we can hatch it using another script, creating a level 1 Palkia in Pokemon Diamond. Knowing that we might need a couple more Palkia, we execute a script that will block the PC from properly removing a Pokemon from any PC box space we move them from, effectively allowing us to clone a Palkia army in the span of a few minutes. We can use a modified version of the move changing script in order to edit other parameters in the Pokemon's data. Parameter 154 is in charge of which Pokeball the Pokemon has. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an ID assigned with the Park Ball in any generation. While we can't view them in Generation 4 or 5 without crashing, there is an unused placeholder ID at OX19, between the Sport Ball at OX18 and the Dream Ball at OX1A. Despite this dead end, we can attach some interesting Pokeballs like this beta sprite of the Master Ball with a blue top, or this glitch version of what would later become the Moon Ball's ID. Well, at least if the game won't let me have a permanent Park Ball Palkia, we can still do the next best thing and catch a Palkia in a Park Ball by putting it into Pal Park. Using another of Retire's scripts, we can copy our party Pokemon into the data of Pal Park, and then fly there and enter the catching show. By going to the mountain habitat, we can find Palkia, which plays its theme music, as well as allows us to catch it with a Park Ball. Is this a ton of work to appease people who probably only care about being slightly right and won't see this as a real Park Ball Palkia? Maybe. But as far as I'm concerned, this absolutely counts, even if it won't be staying in the final collection. With that massive side quest out of the way, we can move on to Generation 5, where our next target is also found using the DNS trick. Pokemon Classic doesn't just end at Generation 4, and extends its features to the Unova games as well. Using Mystery Gift in these games, we can receive the Summer 2013 Shiny Palkia event, which is obtained in a Cherish Ball. The Cherish Ball is never meant to be used by the player, instead reserved for almost every event distribution since its introduction in Generation 4. Heading into Generation 6, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were the first games to begin the trend of including almost every legendary Pokemon in the post-game areas to make them accessible without transfers. Dialga and Palkia are found in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire while soaring in the sky if the player has Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie with them. Entering the rift above Dewford Town, since Generation 6 has no new Pokeballs, I decided to just throw what I had and see what stuck. In the end, we managed to add a Great Ball Palkia to our collection. Generation 7 sees the introduction of the Beast Ball, so in Ultra Moon I spend some time hunting down Palkia via the Ultra Warp Ride. This minigame is interesting for a few reasons, notably its extremely high shiny rates for non-legendary, non-Ultra Beast Pokemon. When going into high-tier Ultra Wormholes that are extremely far away, The shiny odds can be as high as 36%. Just while trying to find Palkia, we ended up with 4 shiny Pokemon, including 2 Medicham, a Heliolisk, and a Crustle. Finally, after finding the right wormhole, we can catch Palkia surprisingly easily given that the Beast Ball makes regular Pokemon 10 times harder to catch, bringing our collection to a total. Now Generation 8 is at the center of this challenge because Sword and Shield has the fastest time from starting a new game to being able to catch a Palkia. After reaching the wild area and obtaining the Pokemon box, the player can immediately ride back to Wedgehurst and board a train to the Crown Tundra, home of the Max Lair. This cave is the hub for participating in Dynamax Adventures, a side mode where you use rental Pokemon and fight through a series of Dynamax raids in order to reach the innermost chamber, occupied by a legendary Pokemon. After you defeat each Pokemon, you get the opportunity to catch them and replace one of your 4 team members. If any of your team faints 4 times or you catch the legendary Pokemon, the adventure is over and you can keep one of the Pokemon you caught. After you face a legendary here, you can write down its location and find it again. But importantly, only one of each legendary can be caught per save file. This means for each new Palkia, I must start a new save file, play up to the wild area, book it to the Crown Tundra, trade in the ball we'll be catching Palkia with, and finally join a Palkia adventure hosted by a second Switch that keeps the path saved. Simple, but a bit time consuming as each reset takes about 55 minutes to reach the wild area from a fresh save file. Despite this limitation, this is the best place to catch the majority of our Palkia collection. They're not only the fastest games, but Max Lair catches are guaranteed, meaning we only need one of each Pokeball each time. Galar also has the largest roster of Pokeballs available to use of any Pokemon game. This includes all of your standard viable Pokeballs that we haven't used yet, but also includes the rare Johto Apricorn Pokeballs, each of which can be obtained via Ball Guy at each gym stadium, except for the Fastball, which is a prize for completing the Rotom Rally 11 times. While these were also obtainable to use in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we would have had to play the entire game before we can get an encounter with Palkia, extending each reset to multiple hours, even if we get lucky with the wormholes. These rare Pokeballs can also be obtained from the Isle of Armor's Cramomatic at a 1% drop chance split across the 4 colors that we put in. Speaking of the Cramomatic, this doofy bird machine is also where we can find 2 extremely rare Pokeballs, the Safari Ball and the Sport Ball. Normally reserved for the Safari Zone in Gen 3, 4, and 8, as well as the Johto National Park's bug catching contest, the Cramomatic has a 1 in 1,000 chance to dispense one of these 2 balls each time you feed it any 4 Apricorns. The exact type of Apricorns you put in doesn't actually matter. Instead, you'll get a Safari Ball if you put 4 of the same color, and a Sport Ball otherwise. The best spot to farm Apricorns is found on Dynatree Hill over in the Crown Tundra. There are 11 to 13 hidden item spots encircling the tree that respawn daily, each giving a random Apricorn. By tossing a wishing piece into the nearby Max Raid Den to ensure it stays occupied, we can skip the day forward to respawn all the Apricorns by entering an online raid, setting the date, exiting the raid, and flying back to Dynatree Hill to refresh the area. This allows us to collect a couple hundred Apricorns in relatively short order, and after only a few hours of picking Apricorns and feeding them to the Cramomatic, we are rewarded with our Safari and Sport Ball. With all of the balls we need, we can head over to the Max Lair to face Palkia once more. Even though we know where to find Palkia and have the balls to catch it, we still have one more hurdle, getting to Palkia consistently. Anyone who's done Dynamax raids with the AI trainers knows that they're not great, and when you can't choose which Pokemon appear, the issue only gets worse when you end up with nothing good to take down the boss. We can solve the first issue by minimizing how many AI trainers we bring with us by having our friends join our raid, allowing us to coordinate who takes which Pokemon. The problem of not getting the Pokemon we need is simpler than it seems. Turns out, Game Freak really didn't want you to quit Dynamax Adventures early. To this end, they implemented a penalty for quitting where the Pokemon you saw won't change until you've completed an adventure the intended way. We can use this against them by finding a path that is guaranteed to defeat Palkia, and then having our host switch quit out without completing the adventure, effectively preserving the encounters we found while we catch our new Palkia on our other game. The attendant here at the Max Lair does catch on to the save scumming eventually after 3 consecutive resets, and begins to ask for increasing quantities of Dynite ore to allow you back into the lair, starting at 3 and increasing by 1 ore each reset, capping at 10 ore per. It's well worth it though, as we found a path that has everything we need. Maractus with Storm Drain to eat Palkia's Max Geyser, Azumarill for damage, and Alcremie and Ribombee for support, easily destroying Palkia every time. After 18 playthroughs of Swords Opening, we can add the Ultra, Safari, Dive, Luxury, Nest, Net, Repeat, Timer, Quick, Fast, Friend, Heavy, Love, Level, Lure, Moon, and Sport Ball Palkia to our collection. We also found a random 1 in 300 shiny Azumarill doing this process, but I took Palkia with me instead, bringing the total shinies to 5 and the total Palkia to 26. Finally, with all the orthodox Pokeballs out of the way, we reach Pokemon Legends Arceus. This one game accounts for over a quarter of all Pokeballs available, introducing 10 different types to use throughout the Hisui region. This game also highlights our second exception introduced in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the Strange Ball. Like the Park Ball, this one is more of a placeholder than a real option for trainers to use. Whenever a Pokemon in a standard Pokeball appears in the Hisui region, its Pokeball appears as a Strange Ball. The inverse is true for Hisuian Pokeballs in other regions. So this isn't one we can have permanently, but we can still use them by having Palkia from different regions in the Generation 8 games. Like the Park Ball, I won't count this as a real Pokeball for our total, but it's worth mentioning. Now Dialga and Palkia are interesting within the context of Legends Arceus. When you reach the climax of the story, the leaders of the Diamond and Pearl clans, Adaman and Irida, will approach to help with your trials in assembling the Red Chain. Only one of them can go with you, and the game's ending changes depending on who you picked. One of the legendary dragons will appear first and absorb the Red Chain's power, allowing you to catch them in one of the 9 regular balls available in Hisui. Palkia if you chose Irida, and Dialga if you chose Adamant. The other dragon appears in its origin form later, and you craft the origin ball to capture them and heal the space-time rift. This single origin ball is a key item, and you can only use it on Dialga or Palkia, making this one ball the only reason these are the only Pokemon that can be in every type of Pokeball. Unlike Galar, there's a bit of story progression that we have to complete before being allowed to catch Palkia each time. And by a bit, I mean pretty much all of it. The biggest roadblock is unlocking the Alabaster Icelands, the final area of the game which requires the player to reach Star Rank 5 in the Galaxy Survey Corps. Star Rank is tied to Pokedex research, so we can get the first 4 stars for free by bringing in every single species in the Hisui Pokedex from Pokemon Home, counting for both the number caught and forms obtained tasks by bringing in the gender differences in various forms of Pokemon like Unknown and Rotom. The last star can come from the research that we perform throughout the game. By sending our starter to the Paldea games via Pokemon Home, we can use the XP managed to get them to an extremely high level. They'll still obey us because we're their original trainer and we met them at level 5, and this also lets us get some research by evolving them back in Legends Arceus, as well as research them by seeing them use their signature moves in all the required battles. Even with all these advantages, I'm no speedrunner, and each attempt took on average 5 hours to complete. The first 2 runs also have a second hurdle, as the Gigaton Ball is unlocked at Star Rank 7 and the Jet Ball is unlocked at Star Rank 8. Rather than doing 3 extra stars of research, we can obtain these 2 after unlocking Braviary in the Alabaster Icelands. Once we set up the second camp, we can participate in the balloon race minigame. If we pop 40 or more balloons in a single race here in the Icelands, we can get a reward of 3 Jet or 3 Gigaton Balls. Ultra Balls are also only craftable at Star Rank 6, but Volo will sell them at the peak just before we go to catch Palkia, and Commander Kamado will hand us 10 of them for free right before our fight. After siding with Irida 9 times, we can add the Hisuian Pokeball, Hisuian Great Ball, Hisuian Ultra Ball, Hisuian Heavy Ball, Gigaton, Feather, Wing, and Jet Ball Palkia to our collection, bringing the total to 35. Each playthrough doesn't end at Palkia though, as the game prevents you from transferring Palkia out of the game until the final cutscene, as they have a role to play in blocking Dialga from nuking you along with the rest of the Temple of Sinnoh. We also managed to find 2 shiny Pokemon just playing through the game this many times. There's another shiny in this whole process. I was literally just thinking as we ran past the Ursaring, hey, it would be pretty funny if we found another shiny. There's a Psyduck outbreak. Should we go check it out, see if there's any shinies? It's right there. I mean, like, you know, might as well, right? I was joking. Finally, we have the Origin Ball, the one-of-a-kind truncated icosahedron that this entire challenge centers around. With one more playthrough of Legends Arceus, we finally side with Adaman, allowing us to catch Dialga first, causing Palkia to appear instead to destroy the temple. Space Bombs in hand, we defeat Palkia one final time. Throwing our Origin Ball, we complete our challenge, and have now collected Palkia in every Pokeball in the series. Across 9 games, the bowels of Generation 4's most powerful glitches, 7 shiny Pokemon, 36 Palkia, and 38 kinds of Pokeballs, our journey has finally reached an end. I'd like to thank Toxicognath, Hugs, Salacasto, Chodokana, and Regiotama for their help in the Max Lair, and Retire Glitch with their help in Generation 4's ASE. And thanks for watching.